Hello, hello. Welcome to another Music Corner live stream. I'm David Colma, and we're going to look at the other Ives song that I prepared for yesterday and wasn't able to get to because it took longer than expected on the other one. So we're looking at Ives's selections from Ives's 114 songs that he wrote in that was published in 1922, and so is now in the public domain. And the song number 13, titled Resolution, according to the publication, was written in 1921, the year before it was published. And remember, as I said yesterday, that the order of the songs in the volume, all of the 114, are in reverse chronological order. So the newest song, the first song is the newest one, and the oldest song is the one at the end. So we're dealing with some of the most recent of Ives' songs in the volume. And so this one is another single-page song. And I'll play the song and then we'll look at it. So again, this is a recording of me playing on the piano and then recording me singing on top of it. So enjoy. Here we go. Stronger under distant skies, faith he needs to mark the sentimental places. Who can tell where truth may appear to guide the journey? So there you go. This one's shorter because it goes a little faster. So here's this song again. Since it's so short, might as well listen to it again. Walking stronger under distant skies, faith he needs to mark the sentimental places. Who can tell where truth may appear to guide the journey? All right, so another short Ives song. So the text here is again apparently by Ives himself. It doesn't list, if you look on the page, it doesn't list any librettist or text writer or poet. So I've divided up here again on 4 lines. The first 2 seem pretty clear where the to guide the journey, if it's the end of the 4th line or end of the 3rd line or its own 4th line, I'm not sure. But anyway, so it's walking stronger under distant skies, faith e'en needs to mark the sentimental places. Who can tell where truth may appear to guide the journey? So the e'en is probably even. So to sort of translate from poetic English into prose, so where the person or whomever is speaking the words is, so we're walking stronger, I don't know what we're comparing it to, under distant skies, so we apparently have so there aren't like close clouds or anything, so it's probably open and like we're on the plains somewhere. Or just, that there's lots of blue, or if there are clouds, they're really far, really high up clouds. So and faith even needs to mark the sentimental places. And we have, so we've got whatever sentimental places are, places that have sentiment. So we're, places that make us feel calm or comfortable, or that we're attached to. So maybe your home, or just places that you're familiar with. So that we're walking under these distant skies, and faith, which is apparently because so the weird thing is that the word truth in the next line is also capitalized. So it makes me wonder if this is like an old style sort of poetic thing where we make faith into an actor in and of itself, or truth. They're like, we're anthropomorphizing them. We're turning them into beings rather than just an abstract concept. So faith. So we're walking under a sky, and faith marks the sentimental places. It needs to mark them. And who can tell where truth may appear to guide the journey? And so it's sort of like notice that there's an exclamation point rather than a question mark at the end. So the who there, that must be, it's like, is this a who can tell where truth may appear to guide the journey? Is there like, are we asking a question, who can? Or are we saying that faith can tell where truth may appear to guide the journey? Or are we saying that we, the speaker of the poem, can tell where truth may appear to guide the journey? So we're kind of either saying that faith can tell where truth guides the journey, or we're saying we can't tell, we're unable to tell where truth appears to guide the journey. So this is more sort of modernist in conceit. So the title might help us. What I mean by modernist is that artists around the beginning of the 20th century, so about 100 years ago and a little bit more, were specifically making artists of varying arts. So whether we're talking about poets or novelists or sculptors or painters or composers or dancers or any of these things, playwrights, that they're purposefully making their art in a way that separates them, that is purposely going against received tradition. So we're attempting to do things that are flagrantly untraditional. And so that happens in sort of poetic places, which I just mentioned in some ways that make it seem kind of backward in a way, that is looking back towards traditional things in the sort of the way of using truth and faith, maybe be people. The other option, of course, is that as you get into modernist poetry in the beginning of the 20th century, they start sort of stripping things away and kind of using, so they're reacting against the thing I was talking about last week, where 19th century poetry, especially English Romantic poetry, is a lot about the interior self and the way we feel, and sort of really exploring those things. And so the modernist poems all still like to do that somewhat, but they do it ironically, and they also sort of purposely stab against it. So you end up with things like Eliot's The Wasteland, or Ezra Pound's cantos, or or William Carlos Williams's poetry. Like there's the one about the wheelbarrow, the red wheelbarrow. I'm not going to say it because I guess that's technically in the public domain. Technically under copyright. Let me look that up to make sure. The Red Wheelbarrow. Oh, published in 1923. So I can read this poem out loud. So the red wheelbarrow is so much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. This is a very famous poem. And each of those little ideas is grouped up into, I'll just pop it into the thing here. So let me just paste it here. And I'll make it much bigger. That's too big. So this is William Carlos Williams' The Red Wheelbarrow. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. So in this poem, I mean, it's basically just describing a scene where we have a red wheelbarrow and it's covered in water because it's been raining, and there are chickens next to it, and they're white chickens. It's not particularly interesting in and of itself, other than it's sort of like it's kind of showing the influence of haiku, which is the Japanese. Let me make sure I'm not making things up. Japanese poetry, where you're sort of being very stripped down in how much you say, and it's very much descriptive of nature scenes and sort of things. But so we're stripping down the kind of high, heavy-handed rhetoric. But what's interesting is how Williams uses that first stanza of "so much depends upon," and so that immediately that opening line places all of this visual and this setting in the context of necessity and need, and so so it's still keeping this sort of human emotion as the main purpose, but then it's this very stark just description of what of a scene, without really almost any kind of sentiment, other than so much depends upon. So so that's what I mean. This modernist is this sort of. It's kind of hard to tell exactly what's going on, but there's this idea of we're moving forward with a journey, and sort of truth guides a journey, which sounds like a thing you would resolve to do. It's like, I'm moving forward with my life, and what I'm going to follow is truth, no matter what I want to do. It sounds like what many humans set out to do as they're attempting to do things in the world, and then they fail miserably, because how many of us can actually follow truth to where it goes? I'll leave that dark thought with you. Go read some Eugene O'Neill plays, and you'll be sad. But there's this other aspect about Ives' way that he sort of forms words and who he chooses. I've got sitting here because I was using this for another purpose earlier in the week. This is Ralph Waldo Emerson, the book of essays and poems by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Ives is well known for a sonata called the Concord Sonata, which is based around American transcendentalist thought in the mid-19th century. So there are movements named after Emerson. There's one named after Henry David Thoreau, and then there are the Alcotts and Nathaniel Hawthorne, the short story writer and novelist. So this is sort of taking on the feel of an Emerson poem, which are kind of really based around these abstract concepts, but he's trying to take his he's more well known for his essays, and then describe them in this, but sort of distill them in a poem that are complicated to figure out. But again, but his essays also have these similar kind of titles like Resolution. Anyway, so I was reading one recently titled, let me look it up. It was called Welcome to Dead Time on the thing. Okay. Well, I don't remember. I mean, there are some of the essays of Emerson. They're like fate, power, wealth, culture, behavior. There's one called nature. These are all very. Another one here is called history. So it's this abstract noun, and let's just follow where our minds take us. So with this little the text here is that it's sort of mixing all of these kind of elements together. And so what's interesting to me is that, so if I rip this down one more time, we're walking, there's a sky, there's places, and they're apparently sentimental, and there we have a journey, and truth may appear to guide the journey, but that doesn't mean it does guide the journey, right? So if we dig deeply into this set of words here, it leaves it's sort of highbrow in its thought, but it's also kind of undermining itself as if you try to take any of it a little too seriously. So it's the kind of way that Emerson would work. So anyway, so let's look at the music to see how he handles this. So the first thing I notice is, again, where it's marked moderately. So if you know anything about Italian, our tempo terminology that's in Italian, the term adagio, which is usually described in our society as a medium slow tempo, comes from the word andiamo, which means to walk. So the idea that we basically describe it as some sort of moderate tempo. So the idea that we would be using a moderate tempo, moderately, as we're describing walking, makes perfect sense if you know much about the choices of speeds that we use for making music. So you can imagine that the music is describing people walking, as the vocal melody does that as well. So we've got, and then we've got this sort of plodding character of wide register. That is, there's lots of space. The low voice does, and so there's huge distance in between. If I try to play the left hand up an octave, not even close. So that's 2 octaves, more than 2 octaves apart. And then notice that the note on the bottom of the left hand, that C, is the one on top there. So we've got this wide spanning register, which is also showing us the distant sky. So we've got this big open area that's being described by just the feel of this music. So that makes it very sturdy sounding. It's almost like if I let my metaphorical mind wander, what I think about is like these old tall tales that are from American folklore, like as if we're walking, what's Babe the Blue Ox, and who's the person with that? There's the, I always forget the big guy that goes with Babe the Blue Ox. Paul Bunyan. So as if we're imagining Paul Bunyan wandering around in this big open expanse with blue skies, and we're walking strongly. Right? I'm overemphasizing this point, but so this is the difficulty of trying to describe the character and feel of music when using adjectives and sometimes technical terminology. So there are ways that we can create these feelings, but then actually being able to put them into words makes it very, very hard. This is the big problem of a YouTube channel like mine, which is how do you talk about these sort of things that we really often don't attempt to speak about in our society, but then also when we do, we fail miserably. So anyway, so that's like a metaphor of what we've got going here. There's something very sort of folkloric aspect to the feel of so, and then this very big open wide spacing sound. Notice if I play the opening and move the 2 hands together and put them in a different register, that it'll lose its character. I mean, that's nice and all. I mean, it sounds pretty. It just doesn't have that. The thing about being spread by more than 2 octaves really does create this different sound. So the idea I'm going to want to mention here, just as I'm talking about this, is the idea of register. So where something happens, is it high, is it low, is it both high and low? Are there things in the middle that sort of fill everything in? And so what we're used to in music is to have stuff where there's something on the bottom, there's a melody on top, and then there's stuff in the middle that makes it sound nice. So by taking the top line and putting it way up here, and putting the bottom line way lower, and then having a big open in the middle that's not there, that sort of gives it both a feeling of openness, but also a little bit of a slightly unstable feeling. So that's all has to do with register, where notes are in relation to each other in terms of spacing. So So then notice that the melody then, of course, is in that middle register. So there's nothing in the piano that's getting in the way of where the melody is singing, even if it's a soprano singing it, not just me down here. So my voice does overlap with some of the middle there in the next bar, but so so let me tear the notes apart here to figure out what's going on. So we'll go first with the melody. So I'm gonna just put some notes in. So we got G. Oh, excuse me. G. So the first note's a G. Second note's A. Let me put it all up here. So G, A, and then C, and then A, and then G, and then we get another C, and then there are two Ds, and then then that higher C again. So if I put all those notes together, the thing that makes it very folk sounding is that we sounds like we're doing sol, la, do, la, sol, do, re, re, do, which gives it kind of a, so it sounds like part of a pentatonic scale. That is, if we had a pentatonic scale, the one that we'd be using would be do, C, D, E, G, A, C, and there's no E, so. So that sort of less than pentatonic use there, and C sounds like the tonic, sounds like do, sounds like the pitch center. That's another term, because I won't get into that right now. But anyway, pitch center. But the thing that's interesting here is that you would expect this melody, if that's really the case, you'd expect there to be a G major chord on the bottom. So if I went to 5, that would be G, C, G, C. That's what I just did. But instead, the notes that Ives accompanies this music with are not that straightforward. So the left hand is doing, geez, this is not going well. Okay. There are thirds in both voices. There's a C and an E, and the upper voice has C, C and A. So the opening chord, rather than being a C major chord, is actually the notes of an A minor chord spaced way out. So I don't know about you. I don't know if I would call that an A minor chord in this context, but those are the notes of one. And then it moves in the next beat. It doesn't move to like a G chord or actually move to a C chord. What it does instead is move to an F and an A on the bottom. And then on top, it's C and E. So that gives us here, spaced really far out, this is an F major 7th chord, F, A, C, E. So we go from an A minor triad in first inversion to an F major chord in root position, F major 7 chord. So, and then with the G in the melody, so you have to be, you'd have to be imagining it. So it's actually, I'm sorry. So with the G, so you could think of this as a G, C added 6 chord, possibly. That would be C, E, G, A. Or that G is not a consonance, and it would be starting the melody on a dissonance, which would be kind of crazy. It's possible, but it's less likely on the downbeat of a 4/4 at the very beginning of something. And then the C and A do fit. The C and A do fit an F chord there. And then the next measure, as the melody continues, is just using those same notes again. So just adding, there's one new register that's added, which is just, but it's just A and C in this chord that happens on beat 3. So we have, so this, I'm sorry, this, and then this. And that's the new thing right here. So what it really does set up is, rather than feeling like the music is moving back and forth between multiple harmonies, it really just sort of seems to be setting up a pitch field, which I'm making up a term there, pitch field. And what I'm just meaning is that this is all one big, these two measures is all one big thing. So the pitches that we have are C and E and F and A. And that's everybody. F, A, C, and E. So it's everything is this F, A, C, E thing here. Let me space these out. So it's sort of got this F major-y sound in the piano, but the melody is really more of a C thing. So, but notice all of the pitches do fit within, even with the melody, because the two notes that are missing in the melody here are the G and the D, which should be right here and right here. So we have a 6-note collection there. So there's no 4th scale degree in F, and if we were in C, there would be no 7th scale degree. So we'd be dealing with the first 6 notes of a C major. So I don't know exactly what I would say, honestly, to tell you the truth. The melody really feels like C is Do, but the piano part doesn't really seem to emphasize C directly. I mean, the first note is C, but the Fs kind of throw it off a little bit. So I don't know, you might disagree with me. So moving on from there, there's the... And then we move to something completely different. And when we finally do get a B in our second phrase here, it is a B flat, which seems to mostly emphasize my B, my F interpretation rather than my C one. So what happens on the downbeat of this moment here is there is an F and an A on the downbeat. But immediately, so the melody adds a B flat, so bum, bum, bum. So that the rest of the melody here, G, A, G, G, A, G, F, G, A, C, A, E, G. It really does emphasize that sort of pentatonic folk song flavor. So by not having a 7th scale degree other than that B flat there for a moment, most of the rest of the melody has this real sort of folk song flavor to it. So... playing with that motive that happens in the melody up here. So this dotted rhythm, distant, comes back as needs to mark the sentiment. Right, so there's all that, with dotted 8th going to a 16th. So that really kind of gives it even more of sort of a martial walking. We're walking strongly, so we might be marching, a way to think about it. And so, but the piano immediately continues to stray from that opening set of notes of the basically C, D, E, F, G, A. If I grab my notes down here, and I'm going to write them out in a different way this time. So we've got C, D, E, grab this F, a G, and an A. So that's what the pitches on our first system. This is system 2. Notice that we get a B flat. I'm going to put it up there. But then also notice that the immediate second note in this system, in the right hand of the piano, is an E flat. And then the D slides down to D flat here. And then we end up with this. So this is what this sounds like at the piano. So the kind of slow And so this, the kind of slow adding of flats in just this little moment sets up a new chord that sort of sticks around as the dotted notes happen in the rest of the melody. And this chord is a G, there's an E, there's that B flat again, there's another G, and there's a C on top. So if I put all those notes together, that's a C, E, G, B flat chord. So it is a C, this would be a C7 under normal circumstances. And with the G on the bottom, it makes it a C7 over G. So that would be like if we were in F major, this would be a 5, this would be a 5, 4, 3. Let me actually show you that. 5, 4, 3. So F major, if I put the right color in, this would be 5. And do I have 4-3 available to me? I'm looking at other places in this thing. Did I put any? Okay, that's the old stuff. Okay, let me open up another file here so I can grab that to show the inversion symbol. So 4 and 3. But he doesn't do what you would expect with a 5-4-3 chord. If I do this voicing out, what it should do is likely move to this, which I did is move to F, F, A, F, C, keeping the C on top. But that's not what happens. The next chord keeps the G, keeps the G's and the C, and the B flat becomes B natural, and the E flat becomes, the E becomes E flat. And that would be this weird chord of a C minor triad with a major 7th. Again in 4-3 inversion. So that new chord sounds, notice how much more dissonant that is. I'll put it in a different sound so you can hear it kind of linger. Listen to how much more dissonant it is to the dominant 7th chord. So what Ives is doing here is he's really not worrying so much about tonal function as so much as that the possibility of half-step motion and common tones again. So the common tones are all the same, but these two chords happen on top of things. So the E goes down to E flat, and the B and the B flat, and the B flat goes up to B, and the other two voices hold over, and then they swap. That is, the E flat goes up to E, and the B goes down to B flat, and then this happens again, and then this happens again. So even though there's this kind of stability here, he's creating motion by just having two of the voices move by half steps. So if I did that a bunch of times, it would be. But the context of notice that when I'm playing them by themselves, the E to B flat sounds dissonant and the E flat to B sounds consonant, even though it's written as a fifth, augmented fifth. But when it's in the context of the C and the G, the dissonant interval, the tritone, the diminished fifth, go into augmented fifth. The augmented fifth sounds more dissonant. It just shows you how dissonance is really about context. so much more than just whether or not an individual interval is in itself consonant or dissonant. So that's how he sort of bides his time as we need to mark the sentimental places. And then for the next little bit, we move to a new kind of field, which starts on the end of the last bar here. And this is really more of an obvious chord than some of the other ones have been so far because of how it's stacked. D, F, A, C, and then there's an A on top. And the melody, the A on top, which is also an A, and the melody is singing the D. So when I move to the next page, you can see that I've got, and then there's a big squonk on the bottom of a D. So there's a D minor 7 chord here, which, you know, so a C dominant 7th chord. What was the last version of the chord? The last version of the chord is the C dominant 7th chord. So we're sort of just holding that out, but having a couple of voices moving to. It's kind of hard to explain. I mean, I guess you could think of it as like a 5 going to 6. But it's not like well, we'll see what happens. So the melody continues with the who can tell where the truth may appear to guide the journey. So the new note there is a B natural on may. Truth may appear. But notice the end goes back to this do, la, sol, do, if we're thinking in C. But I'm not sure it's in C, honestly. So, I'm not really making decisions. I'm sort of just looking at the notes and sort of saying, well, it could be this, it could be that. We could think of it this way. And when it's more clear, I'm willing to say so. So this keeps going. So the D minor 7 continues through this whole bar because all the notes that happen. So we've got D minor, and then another, and then the A on top, and then there's a passing tone G, and then rise on F at the beginning of the next 3-4 bars. So that's all D minor 7 up to there. All right, let me grab this and I'll show. Let's make it. Okay, 0 apparently. And so that continues all the way up to D. And so that continues. We've got a C, feels like a dissonance when the where true. So the C's is like the 7th of that. And then the B comes in when there's a new note on the bottom. So there's a big arrival of an A. So we go from D to A. And then we get this crazy sounding high chord after the A. So we'll see if that goes with it. So there's an A. An A is C. And an E. So A minor sounds good so far. And then we get an F sharp. So that would be an A minor added 6th chord. The way that it's sort of voiced. If I played down the octave, it would be this. You could also hear it as a half diminished 7th chord with F sharp as the root, which I'm not sure I would think of it that way here. Then there's another A, but notice that this is the right hand, and then there's a B above that. And then the B, above that B is a G. I'm sorry, no. E. And then there's a G. So this big chord here has, what is it? So there are 2 A's, 2 A's, 2 E's. So A, C, E, F sharp, B, and G. So that's a 6-note chord. If I stacked it, that's what it would be. Well, I could leave out that A. A, C, E, F sharp, B, and a G too. So what I find interesting about the way he voices it, I'm playing it down. The way he voices it is there's a whole step on the top of the left hand, and there's a whole step on the bottom of the right hand, and then there's a perfect fourth in either direction. No, it's a third over here. Never mind. And there's a fourth, and then there's another third. So the thing that I was thinking was possible is like sort of a mirror shape. That's not what's happening. So there's something about that, but rather complicated. And then the last measure is just a version of the very beginning. Ending on the F sonority, F major 7, with a C arrival note. So the melody is really in C in some sense. But whether or not the piano actually underlines that idea, I'm not sure. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to listen to it all the way through and see if I can think of anything else as it happens here. My headphones. Yeah, no, I was right. Okay. So let's take a listen again. Walking stronger under distant skies. Faith needs to mark the sentimental places. Who can tell where truth may appear to guide the journey? Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. Okay, let me listen to it again. Walking stronger under distant skies. Faith needs to mark the sentimental places. Who can tell where truth may appear to guide the journey? Okay, so what I'm thinking at this point is that, so there are clearly a few different things happening. If I go back to the beginning, so this is the first two measures are the opening sort of space. So about the under distant skies, and we're walking, and he sets up this area where there's, just 6 white note pitches. So we have a C, D, E, F, G, A. The melody really seems to be emphasizing C, whereas the piano sort of emphasizes C, but also emphasizes F. And that there's this sort of ambiguity, which gives it this kind of interesting color of the way that the F on the bottom. What I really also like about the way this is shaped is that Ives is building everything out of groups of thirds. So standard voicing procedures usually have the voices on the bottom at least far away from each other, like a fifth, and then voices are closer together on top. And so the idea that you would have 2 notes close together on the bottom creates a completely different kind of way of thinking about how notes relate. So that's what I'm, and that's also true up here on top. We're used to this, but so it's almost like the right hand is like a color of the left. So that's up a specific kind of universe. And then on the second page, with the arrival of that F, which is new to the melody, it's been in the piano, but it hasn't been in the melody yet. The faith in, so that perfect fourth there creates a new, just a short little transition area of faith in, and then we get this third thing, and this little area of C7 with the E flats and B naturals moving up and down. That's a new separate space where this is where we're marking, and I mean it literally. I think this is basically some kind of tone painting of the marking the central places, in that we're marking it. And the important thing here is the rhythmic thing that's going on, which I haven't mentioned yet, is so that if I show the beats with numbers here, so faith is on beat 1, on beat 2 is the word even, and then the word need happens on beat 3, and then mark happens on beat 4. And notice that the piano arrives on the and of 4. That's not what I wanted to have happen. So plus is going to mean on the and of the beat. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and. That was what it would be. So we got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and done. Then notice that the next times those things come in are all on the ands, even at the end of the next bar. So all of the piano realizations is so all the way the piano plays in this middle section here is after beat 3, it does not touch the downbeat until the next system where we are starting with who can tell. So after who, that's when we'll get the first downbeat, and I'll show you. So who can tell. So that's where we finally get the beat. So this is called, of course, syncopation, where we purposefully emphasize something other than the beat. So this syncopated area here so we have bum, 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 bum. So if I clap, it would be bum, 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 boom. Right. So that helps mark this area off distinct from the rest of the song as this sort of, I guess, a sentimental place. But so what happens in previous to that, the first two beats are where faith even. So this move to this up to perfect fourth here is where all the flats start showing up. So that E flat, B flat, D flat, G flat, that's sort of a incomplete dominant seventh chord. There's no G, which comes in the next beat on the G7. And on the previous beat is a B flat, F, B flat, D, B flat, F, going top to bottom. So that's a B flat major 7 chord. So this sort of sounds a little like a section of maybe A flat, but there's no A flat in the music. But B flat, E flat, and D flat show up. So it's this sort of little transitional passage that also has this chromatic motion of the E flat to D flat in it. So, and then we get a fourth area after the syncopation where this whole D minor 7th thing, and then there's this chord that transitions us, that big A chord with 6 notes in it, that transitions us back to the opening idea where there's this really weird rhythmic choice. So notice that on who can tell where, on where truth. So where, that's also a dotted rhythm like we've been doing, so that rhythm comes back. But then for some reason on truth may appear to guide. So I had to breathe there because I didn't have enough breath in the recording. But that quarter note triplet, so the first note's a half note, so it's quarter note triplets where you hold out the first note. That's a really strange rhythmic choice there. Not that anyone's really been able to tell what the rhythms have been, because there's this 3/4 in the middle. Truth may 3 appear to guide, rather than appear to guide the journey. It's a really I don't know how to think about that, but that's an interesting thing to note, and I would have to think on it more to figure out what's going on. But then the last two bars are clearly, after that little rhythmic hitch, they're they're just like the opening again. So the fifth there is like the first. So it's as if the D minor. So we get this opening, which is sort of C, F, and then we get some flats, which move to a C7 feel, and there's this chromatic motion. And then we slam into D minor 7, a big A chord, A minor extended thing, and then we go back to F. So what's important is that A minor chord has an F sharp in it. So that shows that we're in a completely different place than the D minor 7 chord before it and the F C thing that happens at the end. So it makes for a really... So the thing that I want to make clear at this point is that analysis sometimes isn't about having all of the answers. It's about asking interesting questions and noticing particular things. The thing I talk about when I teach classes is I talk about when we play music, the first thing I ask is, so what did you notice? So it's about noticing things, because we all seem to assume that things are obvious. And if things are obvious, they're not worth mentioning. But if you notice, I mean, this is just, how many measures of music is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is 8 measures of music. And, I mean, being able to, like, have a cohesive idea about what this music is doing and what the song is about and all of, like, how it actually functions is a complicated process. And so being able to know what notes are where and all these things end up being important to having some sort of interpretive ability with the music to come up with what's going on. So what's interesting is that all I'm doing really with this and these live streams is my goal is to just sit here with some music. I do a little bit of prep, so I have some visuals to show you. But the goal here in the end is just to show you that, you know, analysis is really just sort of looking at the music and asking yourself questions and trying to come up with things to say. And sometimes, you know, good ideas don't come to you, honestly. So I like this little song. I think it's really nice. But being able to place my finger on why I like it, I mean, that's more difficult. So the one thing I'll say a few more things is that, so the D minor 7 section is clearly, so we're taking the register idea of the opening and we're expanding it by filling in the middle with big chords. So there are going to be chords in the middle, so we're like filling things out. And then when we ask the question about where truth may appear, where truth, and then we have the D's and the A's, and then there's this big offbeat chord, another syncopation. This makes me wonder if that's sort of like, is that a truth chord? I mean, I'm using the word truth advisedly, like just sort of a nickname. That, you know, it's like, is that undermining the truth? I don't know. Well, we live in a world where truth is really not that easy to figure out sometimes because so many people lie. So I'm sure there are plenty of liars 100 years ago. That's for sure. If you read some Mark Twain, he'll tell you about liars. But then the last 2 bars is very similar to the opening. I was saying it's the same, but it's not exactly the same. I want you to notice that the left hand is in the right octave, but the right hand is an octave lower. So some of the register distinctiveness of the opening is gone. Also, notice the rhythm is different. We have a 3 beats, and then a 1 beat, and another 1.5 beats, and then another syncopation, and then 2 beats. So, and then notice all this, so that the dynamic is getting a lot quieter there, whereas during the D minor 7, it's a crescendo up until that big chord, that big A chord. So he's kind of calming things down after a build-up there. So, and he's using register to help him. So as it's building, he's filling in this very large span of the piano, and when he wants to calm it down, putting the music back into sort of mid-register and lower register, and not using as active rhythms helps him calm the music down to give you the idea that, you know, when truth has appeared to guide the journey, we're done. So, all right. So I don't know how helpful this has particularly been, but I've had fun sort of sitting here thinking about this for almost an hour. So I'm going to listen to the song one more time. If I have anything else to say after that, I'll say that, and if not, have a good one. So let's listen to the song all the way through one more time. So this is from Ives' 114 Songs. This is number 13, titled Resolution, on a text by Ives himself, apparently. Walking stronger under distant skies, faith needs to mark the sentimental places. Who can tell where truth may appear to guide the journey? Sure. All right. I'm David Kloma. This has been another Music Corner live stream. Have a good day.